Hi, good morning.
Hi,
How are you? Nice to meet you.
nice to meet you. My name is Yara. I'll be your interviewer for today.
Nice to meet you, Yara.
Okay, so Timmy, tell me a bit about yourself.
Here's my resume.
Oh.
Well, technically, I am a graphics and communication management student from Ryerson University, and I'm in my third year. I will be currently looking for an internship. I am an international student from Nigeria, and I'm in Canada to study for 4 years. And yeah, pretty much. I've not really had hands-on graphic design experience besides the work we do at school, but technically that is as much experience as I've had, and I would be really open to looking for an internship that, even if it's not graphic design, would be something related to that field. But I'm also currently working on several projects by myself, just solo projects that would involve art exhibitions, posters, even paintings too, because technically art is my forte. Like, I grew up drawing like skits and sketches and comic books just for fun as a kid, because I really have an interest in that area. So that's why I really wanted to go into graphic design.
Okay, thank you. Can you also tell me a bit about your strengths and weaknesses?
My strengths and weaknesses. I would say I would start with my strength. My strength is technically being very artistic. I would have a very artistic, a very creative direction in that point. Like, I really love going through different media and like different like ways of applying art into the world in general. Like, if it, from varying from like video games to animation to augmented reality to comic books, print and digital media in general. So I would say that would be my strength. I'm also very time, like, I know how to manage my time very well. Like, time management is a big thing for me because I love to get things on time. I love to be very organized, so that is a thing for me. I also um, prefer working in groups because I love to get ideas from everyone. So I would be able to understand how their perspective is and see how I can better my art in general. And my weakness would be, I feel like I am very kind. Like, I think I am more emotional than professional in that aspect. So I've had a certain problem with a customer one time that she scheduled a meeting with me and I came on time, but she was very late. So she came like maybe 30 minutes after the time she gave me, and then she didn't apologize, but because I had places to be, like I said, I love being organized and all that. So I waited for her, and I texted her, and she was like, "Oh, like, I will be there in 5 minutes," but she came 20 minutes after. I was very lenient with her because I have my own job and she has her own job, but like, I just guess she wasn't as organized as me, and I can understand. Maybe not everyone is meant to be like me, but in that aspect, she did come late, and she was very rude and very like, she was like in a hurry, and I was like, I've been waiting here since, and you come and you're like, oh, like, we need to get this done quick. I need to get somewhere else. Like, it's pretty rude to me in general. So I did present the idea to her, give her the whole design process, broke it down in the simplest way as possible. Did give her my rates and everything, and then she was like, "Oh yeah, for sure." And then she did tell me that she had problems. So she technically brought her problems in her life into the whole meeting. But normally, I know that is not acceptable because you're just there for business. It shouldn't be anything else, right? You don't want to have that kind of relationship with your customer, especially if you just get to know them in general, if you're just knowing them in general. So I did give her an open mind, and I did give her my suggestions on how to tackle her problem. And then she was like, "Oh yeah, thank you." And then she did apply it. Honestly, she did apply it, and she said it did help a lot. But at the same time, I feel like that was not the place to do that, and it was not in my place to do that also. So I feel like that is something I need to work on, being less emotional, especially in meetings, strictly business meetings, than like being less emotional than professional.
Okay. And what do you think makes you a good graphic designer?
Um, that's actually quite a very egotistic question, but in general, being a great graphic designer is not just about you having the skills. It's about being able to communicate those skills also, right? I can design a poster, but I might be the greatest artist ever. I could draw an amazing poster, put it together, but I might not be able to communicate my idea, communicate the whole point of the poster. So being a graphic designer to me, you need to have different types of skill from language and communication, from grammar to even color management to everything. Like you need to have every single bit and piece of it to make sure you're proficient enough to communicate that idea. Graphic design is technically about communicating, about reaching out, voicing out whatever you need to voice out. It's not just about you designing your art. Like yes, your art is fine, it's beautiful, your layout is beautiful, but if you cannot get the idea across, it is pointless. So I feel like being a graphic designer, to be a great graphic designer, you need to implement a bunch of skills, and that would vary from color management, vary from grammar, and um, general language. Um, it would also vary from um, art. Art does matter, yes, and yeah, pretty much. I think those three things are key, as much as I can.
Okay, and going from that question, what made you want to be a graphic designer?
Well, I have always been a big fan of art in general, fine art at least. I always loved drawing with pencils. When I was a kid, I would scribble everywhere. Like at a point, I would even scribble on the walls, like just to try and make my room look cooler, right? So like I would always love scribbling and making sure I could design things in general. Like my assignments, like when I would do assignments, I would design my assignment instead of actually working on the assignment. So I feel like I was just a very, very passionate person about art, and I really loved drawing and all that. So I wanted to implement that in a way that I could actually like communicate with people, right? And like not it's not just about drawing, but communicating with people or being able to even touch someone's life in the basic way as possible, like in like most basic way as possible, like reaching out. So I actually chose graphic design just because I wanted to like showcase how I would communicate with someone and showcase my art too. So I did learn typography and like a whole lot of other stuff to help me with that aspect.
Yeah. Okay, and what qualities and skills do you think a graphic designer should have?
I feel a graphic designer should be organized. A graphic designer should be timely. They should know how to manage their time perfectly. A graphic designer should have some sense of aesthetic. It doesn't have to be you being proficient in drawing or extremely good in drawing, but you should have some kind of aesthetic in the sense that you should know what goes where and why should it go there. From color to like shapes to everything, numbers, you need to have that aesthetic, that feeling that, oh, this looks pleasant, like pleasing, sorry. This looks very pleasing to the eye in general. A graphic designer should be very, very hardworking, because I know like then some people get cocky and say, oh, it's just a design. Like it's just something I could sit down and do in like an hour. Like you're gonna do it in an hour, but it's not gonna be your best work. So I feel like graphic designers should take more of their time to work on projects, like be hardworking. A graphic designer should always be open to criticism, because a lot of people will tell you that, oh, excuse me, this work does not look as good as it's supposed to be, or the colors look off, or the shapes and the text look off. But you have to understand that criticism, and you need to be humble. That's one thing they need to know. They should be humble, no matter how huge your skill gap could be from the next graphic designer. the next graphic designer could tell you that this is off and you need to take his advice and look at it. Don't be proud and act like you can't take corrections from anyone.
Okay, actually going off from your answer, how do you think you take criticism?
I take criticism very good actually. In an instant, when I was freelancing for an agency just for a short while, it wasn't anything big because like I said, I've not had any experience. It was just like a thing that my aunt set up together for me just to like freelance for an agency for like a couple of days, and it was there was this kid who was actually just getting into high school. He was actually a graphic designer, and I was pretty surprised because when I was in high school, I didn't have that opportunity, right? So I was designing a poster for them, and I thought it looked good. Like everyone else around me was like, "This is very good. Like good job to me and everything." And he told me how I forgot to add bleeds to the poster and how it could be like, oh, when they wanted to print it, they would have an issue and it will ruin the whole design. And I was like, bleeds? I was like, bro, like bleeds they don't really do much. Like it's just a safety guide, but it doesn't really have to be there. I was totally wrong. It had to be there because it was gonna be a printed poster, and if anything happened, like it would have backfired. The company would have probably lost a bunch of money and it would backfire to me. And I know I'm an intern, or not even intern, but like just somebody who's helping, like a freelance, just like something like that. I know it's not like, I'm not professional, but I should have taken that extra step to at least make sure that I had that integrity to make sure that there will be bleeds so they don't have an issue in the future regarding the poster. So he told me and I was like, okay, I'll just add it just because you said it. I mean, it does make sense. It does relate to what I'm designing, and it wouldn't hurt to add bleeds. So I did. And actually it did work out well because on one of the copies of the posters, we did have a slight cut that was almost reaching the poster end. So the bleeds actually did help.
Okay.
Yeah.
And would you consider yourself someone who works better in a team or on your own?
I would say team, because I love hearing what people have to say, like offer their criticism, or even I would love to design. I love collaborating with people. Like it's just very pleasing for me. Like I love doing that, like crossing ideas with people, like similar ideas or even different ideas, just to see what it brings out. So in general, I would love working with a team because I do appreciate people's work and I love working with people. I love meeting new people, getting into a good relationship with them, being able to create and communicate stuff in general. So I will be very open to working in teams. I would also work solo if I had to, but team also would be a good place for me.
Okay, and quick design question.
Yep.
If I asked you to create a magazine and a web layout as well as a image poster,
Yep.
could you state to me which softwares you would use for each of those designs?
So a magazine, I would use Adobe InDesign or Quark Express. I don't know if you've heard of those, but I would use that. For a web ad, I would use preferably Adobe Illustrator so I can have more flexibility on putting out shapes and text. For an image poster, if I'm correct, for an image poster, I would preferably work with Photoshop or Adobe InDesign. I would work with Photoshop because I have more manipulation on the image in general, because that is like, if it's an image poster, it's revolving around one central image, which we need some retouching and some cleaning up and everything. So I would rather use Photoshop to do that, then probably transfer it into Adobe to add more text, so the text will be vector instead of it being a little bit blurry or pixelated.
Yeah. Okay, and how would you say you handle conflicts with coworkers? Give me an example of a conflict you had to go through with a coworker or a team player or...
So I actually, during school, we did get into groups one time to create, it was a charity poster for sick kids, and it was more like a competition. So we did create it, but before we did, like the whole production process, while we were having meetings and trying to figure out the best like palettes and the best text to use for the best fonts to use for them, a friend of mine was like, oh, like he was like, because I was given more ideas than he was, or more than anyone else in the room. So he called me out for it. He was like, oh, like this is not one of your projects, Timmy. Like you need to relax. Like take it easy. Everyone can't contribute. I was like, I'm sorry. Like I didn't know that was kind of offensive to you, but I was just contributing as much as everyone else would want to contribute. I was like, if you want to contribute, like go ahead and talk. Go ahead and voice out. Like I don't have any problem with that. I'm just giving my own 2 cents on the matter in general. Like there's nothing, I don't think there's anything wrong with that, but if it did offend you, I'm sorry for that, right? And then I realized that, okay, maybe he did kind of have a problem with that, so I just cooled it down. And later on, when we started deciding, I kept thinking, because the font we used was actually a sans serif font, but because Sick Kids, the whole vision behind Sick Kids in general is for people who have problems, or not problems, but disabilities, or you're not in the preferred state they would want to be, right? So I said, you know what? Why don't we go with a serif font to make it less casual and more formal, right? So like anyone could actually read these fonts. Like someone with long-sightedness or someone with colorblindness or some sort of disability would not have to struggle just because we're using sans serif to make it look more pleasing aesthetically. Like this one might not be, there's a way we can make it pleasing aesthetically by using serif fonts. So I pushed that idea forward, and he wasn't okay with it, but I did persuade the other members to be okay with it, and they found it fine. But he just wasn't okay with it because he also had the idea I was overdoing it. I was being that person in the room, the one who talks too much or puts out their ideas too much more than anyone else. So he wasn't okay with that, and then he called me out again, and I was like, okay, like, it's just a suggestion. I'm not saying everyone should go with me. At the end of the day, it's a teamwork, and we have to come together to do it. Yeah. So I actually did and then I talked to him later, and I was like, okay, like, I understand you might have a problem with me with this, but it would be better if you addressed me personally than addressing me in a group where everyone is being professional as much as possible, and then you are bringing like almost a personal issue to the table. Like I feel like that is not the place for it, and whatever it is, I am sorry if I offended you, but this was a private meeting we had later, but I was just giving him my opinion about the situation. So, yeah.
Okay, good to know. And where do you think you'd see yourself in 5 years?
A creative director.
Okay.
So I would love to work from a junior graphic designer to a creative director. I want to be able to put more of my ideas out there, like make things, a creative director that would be able to branch out not only in art, but maybe in fashion, maybe in video game development, maybe in animation. So I would love to touch every single aspect of art in general, to be able to create something, because I know that there's like a huge knowledge pool out there, and I would love to learn as much as possible. Being a creative director is more about knowing different types of ways to implement your art in. Doesn't always have to be like print or just the poster, or you know, like you can do a lot more. Like you can start up a small animation. That is also, you know, just a good thing in general. So.
Okay. Well, thank you very much, Timmy. It was great seeing you. Thank you for
very
coming
much.
in.
I really appreciate it.
Take care.
Thank you.
How long was